As always, this meeting is being recorded. If you could please drop your name and organization into the chat, we'd appreciate it. Also, throughout the presentation, feel free to drop any questions in the chat. Next slide. I'm Nate Fernandez, Technical Program Manager at CalStart. We also have Watson Collins, Senior Technical Executive at EPRI, Andra Rogers, Government Program Manager at EPRI, Ken Lim, Technical Leader at EPRI, Jasna Tomic, Vice President at CalStart, and Elizabeth Hellier, Project Manager too at CalStart. Next slide. And we see here all the different stakeholder groups that make up this Industry Technology Advisory Committee. You can see we have about 21 charging infrastructure organizations, 18 OEMs, 10 fleets, 4 government agencies, 10 utilities, and 4 ports and some associations. Next slide, please. So for the agenda today, we'll do our typical overview and recap of 2023, what to expect in 2024. Then we'll move on to e-truck and industry updates, which will include mapping MDHD charging sites, review of the SCE lab and pilot sites, and then a discussion of the NACS connector implications for MDHD ZEV market. And then we'll end with a quick engagement survey and then next steps to conclude the presentation today. And with that, I'll pass it over to Watson.
Yeah, and Nate, could you stay on that slide for a second there for everybody? So on the previous one there, please. When you look at the agenda there, around some of these things we're talking about, this mapping medium heavy duty charging sites and the SCE lab work and activities on NACS. You know, I see Alex is on the call and Andy Bartosh and hey Andy and Diego and Cheryl. You know, we definitely want your kind of like feedback and reactions and like you know, tell us, you know, like if we're on the right track, if this things we're talking about resonate with you or not. That's what we're looking for is, you know, the CEC. We're funded by the CEC. We can now go to the next slide there. We're funded by the California Energy Commission, and the objectives that they're really laying out for us is like we want to help create this hub of activity for figuring out a high-powered charging network along these key corridors. But a big part of that is making sure we're engaged with you in the industry, listening to you, and integrating that feedback into our work and making sure we're creating alignment and instead of going out on our own tangent and writing reports to sit on people's shelves. We want to produce results and actionable and help this industry move forward. We've got work on equity and workforce development, as described here. We're doing technology assessments, market needs, R&D, and creating, you know, the penultimate part of the project is creating this public charging corridor strategies, and it's really driven out of the work that we do before that. So the purpose on the next slide, we talk about the purpose of this ITAC, which I started out when we talked about the agenda on slide 7 there. The purpose of the ITAC is to be kind of like the feedback on our project, helping guide and provide market input on what's happening there. It looks like we're still stuck on slide 6 here. Yeah, so the purpose of the ITAC is really to help guide this activities here. You know, be helping us understand the fleet needs, help us understand the technology development, help us understand what's going on in corridor planning. And so now on the next slide, if we can switch over to that, please. On slide 8, we have overviews, and we can kind of implement all the animations there, please. We have publications that we put out in 2023, which is great. You can go to the ITAC.org website. We've got some great publications there. And so we're starting to publish. We're starting activities on construction. And so again, big milestones there that the Advanced Technology Research Center, we're getting construction activities going there. We're making a lot of progress on the demonstration sites on getting those things engineered and those projects rolling. We've got advisory committees, great accomplishments there on all the number of advisory committee meetings we've had. And then all those work on collection of truck movements. And so we've got great work ahead in 2024. I think we even had a video that we produced at the end of last year. I think somebody might be able to post that in chat on this video we posted on accomplishments from last year. But next year, what to expect in 2024? Again, we do want to kind of, now that we're moving towards the point where we're really trying to talk about corridor plans and starting to get the lab going, and we're moving towards more tangible things, that the purpose of stakeholder engagement is going to be more increased. We need more feedback from you on these things. When we're working on corridor development, we need even more feedback from you and reactions to the work that we're doing. And also in the technology advancement, and that's why there's a bit of a peel out in this agenda to talk about the NACS stuff. So what you see, our agenda is tied into what to expect in 2024. These are some of the priorities we have in 2024. I don't know, Yasu, you want to also give some feedback on accomplishments in 2023
Sure.
and 20, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Just very briefly. First of all, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I see 26 people. Just want to encourage everybody to write, because we don't see necessarily your association. We see the names and participants. Maybe in chat, just drop in who you're with and just say hello. Yes, I think this is an important year, 2024, for us, because we've done a lot of the planning, the coordination, et cetera. And now it's going to be into the construction and really preparing the 2 pilot sites and really facilitating some of the corridor development through the heat maps, et cetera. You'll get a look at some of the beginning of the heat maps and the modeling work that we've been doing, but we're really excited about breaking ground in 2024 at Carson and Ontario, the 2 pilot sites that were marked up for this project from the beginning. And then really speaking on the 3rd bullet there at the bottom, like megawatt charging planning, sort of for the charging, testing, data collection. We won't cover all of that in this meeting today, but just want to give you a heads up that we do want to connect with you, OEMs. We do want to connect with you, infrastructure providers. We do want to connect with you, fleets, individually, and really focus on how we're going to get the best value out of this, the testing and modeling, et cetera, that we'll be doing. So please visit the website, email us separately, and keep your eyes sort of on the activity here on 2024.
Great. So we can turn it over to Ken to talk about some of the updates on the lab and the work on the sites there, Ken. Go ahead.
Thanks, Watson. So the Advanced Transportation Research Center, we talked about this in the past. One of the main focus points of 2024 is to open up the SE High Power Charging Lab, which we're breaking out to 2 phases. So the first phase is what we're calling the lower powered charging lab with 350 kilowatt capabilities. That's under construction right now, and we're still working towards an opening of that lab by the end of March of this year. So it's coming up soon. Phase 2 is the official high power charging lab. That's the one that can do medium voltage capabilities, 2.5 megawatts direct grid capabilities. And that one is still forecasted for completion at the end of this year. So in terms of who can use the lab, it's EVSE manufacturers, vehicle OEMs, equipment manufacturers, electrical equipment manufacturers, and the lab can be used for a whole gamut of testing. I put a couple in there just as examples, diagnostic testing between EVSEs and EVs, EVSE conformance, interoperability testing. So we are currently taking applications. We do have a few applications in the queue, but I do encourage everybody on this call that's interested in potentially using the lab to, visit the website. There's more details on there about the laboratory. There's a contact form if you have any questions. There's also an application intake form as well if you're interested in applying.
And Ken, that picture on the right, that's
That's
the
phase 1.
equipment's on site already, and it's just in the process of getting, is that correct?
That's right. So thanks for pointing that out, Watson. So that picture is phase 1 of the lab. All the equipment's there, where we're just in the middle of installing it, commissioning it, getting everybody trained in the month of March, and then ideally getting the lab open by the end of March.
Let's see, a question for Tony. Hey, Tony.
Tony, you're muted.
There it is. Sorry, I've forgotten how to use Zoom. So I hear you saying applications open for use. Great. I'm wondering how much engagement or how much interest you have from the OEMs. Are we planning a queue of Volvos and Daimlers, or any? I don't know. Do you have any engagement with them directly?
Do you want to take it, Watson?
No, go ahead, talk about just the characteristics of who's applied so far, or who we're talking
Yeah,
to.
so in terms of the folks that have applied so far, it's mainly focused on EVSE manufacturers and electrical equipment manufacturers like transformer manufacturers and so forth. I think there's a lot of benefits to having the vehicle OEMs access the lab as well, or partnering with EVSEs to do that testing. But I will say that we haven't received any applications from vehicle OEMs or seen test plans that include vehicle OEMs. So that's definitely something that we can work on.
Yeah, okay, cool. I'm just curious.
But if any OEMs want to work with us in a deeper way for interoperability testing, and so if any of these EVSE manufacturers want to work with a vehicle, we'd love to be able to have that testing with vehicles instead of these simulated loads that are available through this hardware. We'd love to actually have that kind of activity going on there too. So again, if we'd love to encourage that, and maybe we should reach out to some of the equipment manufacturers, vehicle manufacturers, if that's an option there.
Watson, Diego here from DTNA. I've let our engineering team aware of this as a potential resource. We have our own MCS development that we're doing alongside our vehicle development. But yeah, I've made them aware of this potential resource if they want to pursue that.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Yeah,
Yep.
because what's going to happen is there's going to be some EVSE manufacturers that are going to be looking for that kind of thing, right? So, and it's expensive for everybody to buy their own trucks, right?
And Watson, there's another kind of comment question also, maybe we could answer that, whether it's only emulator-based testing, or whether if a Class 8 truck was there, whether there would be room.
I was actually just responding to that in the chat, but yeah, I can touch on that. It is emulator-based testing for phase 1, which is indoors. As you can see, we're going to be limited in terms of vehicles that we can bring in. On the other side of this photo, you're going to be able, if we flip the camera around, there's actually large roll-up doors. So you can probably pull in a vehicle through roll-up doors, but like I said, it'll be limited. For phase 2, however, that's opening at the end of the year. That's going to be pretty much an outdoor lab. So it's a parking lot that's being converted. So there's gonna be plenty of parking for Class 8 vehicles in phase 2. And then the idea is all this equipment is going to be brought out and sort of containerized in that parking area. Hope that answers your question, Andy.
Yep, I think so. I was gonna maybe recommend even trying to host with like a Charin interop test when they schedule one of theirs in the coming months. If you guys hosted that, that might bring some nice attention and traffic to this lab.
That's a great point, and we've discussed that idea as well.
Okay.
We're aligned.
Yes, so the great thing when we get to phase 2 is the power level we'll be able to do there. If you notice the power levels, we'll be able to do over 2 megawatts there. That's what that interconnection is, and that's the difference of timeline for what we're able to do with this lab at lower power levels, up to 350 kW. But that's what we're building is so we can do high power stuff, medium voltage connected if folks even needed that. And I think we do have an application, Ken, for one of the medium voltage connected charger solutions. So
Yeah, that's been the main interest, actually. Yeah.
I would just encourage OEMs, et cetera, to reach out if there's ways that this can be used that we haven't thought of. We are definitely open to looking into that and can speak to SCE, et cetera. So thank you for all the questions.
All right, if that's it, move on to the next slide, pass it on to Yaza.
Okay, so moving on, the next section here, we want to share with you the mapping efforts that we've been involved on or leading on medium heavy duty charging stations. So one thing that our team has been, as part of the ITAC project that we've been working on, is modeling freight volumes and charging stations for planners and implementers. And that is part of a specific task within the project. So we're working with Lawrence Berkeley and with Cambridge Systematics as partners on that, and really looking at the traffic volumes through data that we have, and then modeling some of that to understand where the needs are, depending on regional needs and the statewide needs overall. The second thing we've been also doing, as there's been more and more charging stations and sites for medium heavy duty charging, and we all kind of sit around, scratch our head, where's this site, where's that site? So we decided we're putting together a map and doing a mapping exercise really to put on the map all the charging stations that are in existence right now or confirmed as planned, sort of with their dates, etc. And you will see some of those maps here. We think that will really be helpful, just not only to this project, but overall to the industry as we push along. And then thirdly, again, it's not only California, right? It's national. Our team is CalSTART, sort of in addition to the effort we're putting in eTruck here. We have a parallel effort really working on a national map for fleets and suppliers that will have reliable, with sort of showing the reliable medium heavy duty charging stations. And again, we'll be putting those on the map as they become available or or we'll color them in different colors that you will see here, showing when their availability will be up. So that's what this, I'll let our team speak to these three parts separately in more detail, but that's sort of the mapping effort we've been involved in. Liz, I think you take this on. This is a team effort here. So.
Thank you, Jasna. So as we reported in previous ITAC meetings, ITAC is attempting to model the need for high power charging infrastructure statewide in California. And so our team is actually very excited about this modeling effort, which is more sophisticated and more detailed than any publicly available study currently. For instance, it uses greater computational resources when we're working with the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab on this, and also uses novel approaches to data in partnership with Cambridge Systematics. So what you're seeing here is a first cut of an estimate of freight volumes for medium duty and heavy duty vehicles in California. And so this is the product of real-time truck GPS data combined with contextual information, such as freight travel behavior and surveys of fleet needs. And so this work allows us to then estimate for the future as well. So we'll be looking at 2030, 2035, 2040, and allows us to understand where the most important locations will be for deploying electric truck infrastructure. And so what we are attempting to do here is to create a high-level resource for policymakers and planners to coordinate when and where there needs to be public investment. So at this point in time, this is just a preview of the modeling efforts to kind of capture the market for freight travel. And so in the following week, we will be sending you this map along with a description of kind of the data process in order to get to this map. And so what we're very interested in hearing from ITAC members is do these match industry expectations of kind of the current freight travel patterns, and we'll be having 2030 in the first instance there. And so at this point in time, we just want to make sure that this map looks accurate to the industry. And we need to make sure at this stage in the process, because this will inform the charging needs model that we're also working with the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab on. So yeah, just wanted to show you a preview. You will have more information on this next week as well, where we will be requesting ITAC feedback. And now we can move on to kind of mapping medium and heavy duty charging stations. So how will this information be used for corridor planning efforts, especially when we start visualizing kind of charging needs in California? We will be taking into consideration where stations are currently being built and which stations have been confirmed in the medium term, also in California. And we also kind of identified a gap in a lack of a centralized hub of information for medium duty and heavy duty fleets to be able to kind of visualize and identify where they would be able to charge in the future. And so what we're doing here is that we are working on an interactive map. And I'm going to just take over the screen sharing for a few minutes here to kind of show you the draft map that we have worked on, which will be available on the ITAC website shortly after ITAC feedback and CEC feedback.
And Elizabeth, what's the ETA for this map to be available? Maybe I missed that.
Are we talking about the first map or this interactive map?
The interactive map, the one that you're showing right now.
Mm-hmm. So it is due for ITAC feedback next week, and then CEC feedback at the beginning of March. So in the next 3 weeks is the estimate. All right, so as you can see, this is what we have so far. A total of 48 chargers, which are color-coded. So if we look at the public, we have in blue those that are currently open, in orange those that are in progress, meaning they are in construction due to open shortly, and those proposed, so confirmed kind of investments, but not yet in construction. So if we, for example, zoom into the Los Angeles area, we can see there's a lot of activity happening around the Port of Long Beach. 2 currently opened, and then we have a few that are in progress. A terawatt station here, and a foreign mobility station here as well. So if I zoom out, we have an example here in Bakersfield of the type of information that will be available for each station. So the maximum power level, primary operator, how many chargers, and we're also looking at an estimated opening date for those that are currently proposed and in progress. And so for fleets, for example, they can filter out the public station, the private stations, sorry, which are more of a planning tool on our side. And then, for example, they can filter out those that are not yet in construction. And as we can see, we have 20 stations that will be publicly available that are either in construction or currently open in California. So yeah, that's it on this interactive map. We will be sharing the kind of a spreadsheet of all of the stations that we have so far on this map that will be shared around the ITAC members. So if we've overlooked any stations, we can add those next week at this stage in the progress. Right, how do I?
And Liz, when it's available, where would you go to access that when it's available externally?
On the ITAC website. So we've created a space there. So yeah.
And Liz, you were saying that 3 weeks thereabouts for this to be accessible. When do you see it expanding to states other than California?
Well, this is actually a great
tee up.
Exactly.
Okay.
Gia, can we put up the slides again? Thank you.
Diego,
Alright.
right? It's never good enough for you, right? You
No,
always
I
want
couldn't have-
more.
Couldn't have paid you to set us up better, Diego. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Jesse Lund here from CalStart. Thank you for your patience with the background noise. I'm at the airport. But I did want to share that CalStart fully acknowledges this is happening outside of California's borders as well. We've been tracking at a national level all the announcements of charging developed for trucks and buses, medium heavy duty vehicles across the country. Unsurprisingly, most of it is in California so far, but that is changing pretty quickly, actually. We're starting to see a lot more interest elsewhere. And so we are simultaneously working on developing this map for nationwide truck charging. The big difference here, besides just being nationwide, not California specific, is that it's really geared toward fleets, toward users who want to know where is the nearest charging to me, whether it's down the street from my depot, or if I want to do maybe even a longer regional route, for example, is there on-route charging I can stop at to top off? So this will not include the private behind the fence charging that is included in the map Liz just shared. It will only be what we're calling shared and public sites. I've got a question about how we're defining those here in a minute for the discussion. But just to go through what we're planning, again, the target audience is really fleet users, and we're hoping to build in some functionality that I hope folks on this call think would be useful. The first is the ability for fleets to connect directly with site operators. So specifically for those shared sites where perhaps you need to have an agreement with the site operator, you can't just show up and charge. That you could go on, see where that charging is, and there would be a quick form that you could easily connect with, whoever's leading business development for that site. Similar to if you're familiar with the HVIP catalog, how you can go on and just see who the dealer is and automatically send them a message. That's a functionality that we're hoping to build into this. Background noise. We are also hoping to build out the functionality where if there's not any charging currently located near you and you want there to be, that you could express that interest. And then CalStart and our partners could work together to determine, are there others in this area who are also interested, and potentially, put out an RFP for some of our charging as a service, shared site developers or public site developers to develop in that area. Potentially also leverage some of the federal funding like the CFI grant. There's some other new grants coming out as well. So that's the quick overview of this. I see one Oh, okay, not a question in the chat. Yeah, I don't think availability of chargers in real time will be part of version 1, but that's very helpful feedback. I would love to talk more about how we could build that into version 2. I'm hoping we can get just a 1.0 version out by, I'm going to say, the end of March to be safe, hopefully even sooner. And then would love to meet with anyone who's interested and has feedback about what additional functionality we might add in there. I think it also just depends on site operators if they have that sort of API available. But if there's any feedback or questions specifically about this national map, please reach out to me directly. I just put my email in the chat. Otherwise, I think we're good to move to the next slide. I have some discussion questions I'd love to run through with this group. The first is back to basics. How should we be defining medium and heavy duty charging? I saw one comment in the chat. Right now, there's no specific requirement. We're kind of just tracking folks that we know are building charging focused on those vehicles as opposed to the standard light duty sites that we've seen developed over the past decade. But should we be requiring like certain ingress egress requirements, charger cord lengths, pull through sites? I'm just throwing out ideas, but I would love to hear from this group if anyone has suggestions, or if you think just leave it open and let folks kind of self-identify. Really, any feedback here is welcome. So I'm going to go on mute. Feel free to come off mute and provide feedback, or to put it in the chat.
Yeah, I would definitely say charging lane size dimensions are critical.
Yeah.
We have lots of experience charging our vehicles at Electrify America stations, and that doesn't go over well. So we want to avoid medium heavy duty vehicles blocking, entire parking lot lanes at a Walmart. So
Yeah.
I say, yeah, dimensions of the stall, whether it's a pull through, and yeah, that's critical.
I'll just add to echo that, Diego. Yeah, just dimension size is, that's that's the entry point, right? So critical. I'll also, and this is Tony. I'm with BP, right? And many of our sites that are being planned across the TA network, the travel centers truck stop network, both like our pilot for specific, like designed really for Class 8 trucks, but then also in the forecourt, we're planning light duty, but I guess the point here is I'll just, you need to have some clear, dimensions and a clear definition for sure, but also I'll just ask for some flexibility in the definition as we are planning and designing our sites. So for example, we're looking at designing our sites to allow for, bigger, pull through, even the ones up front that might be, 90% just cars, to be able to, we're looking at designing them as well, bigger for some medium duty trucks, but also for the heavy duty, in some cases, they may be behind a fence, but still publicly accessible. So for example, I can picture a, Class 8 driver showing up. We're thinking most of our customers will be on contract and scheduled. However, we may also, I think, should have, the ability for a driver to show up with a Class 8 truck. We'll need to stop and, talk to someone maybe in the store and get the pass to go back into the back parking. And I guess my point here is just we're working it out right now. And so I'd be a little bit leery of hard definitions of this is what constitutes public.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you.
I think at the same note, though, I would argue that, accessibility for, 53-foot and oversized loads, as well as the kind of the general dwell time expectation, right? Is like there's a big difference between a truck stop where guys might be parked overnight and underutilized versus, yep, it's a 90-minute charge time, and that is the expectation that you're in and out in that period.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we're designing for. But just the placement of it within our site, the one in Ontario, which is our first and our pilot demonstration, it happens to be behind our fence, but that doesn't mean it's not publicly accessible, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Tony. And yeah, the charging speed is an attribute that we definitely will include from day one, from version 1, the max charging speed, so you can get a sense of how long are you going to be there to charge. I think this question of, are you just pulling up? Do you need to have an agreement? That gets to this next question about shared versus truly public versus hybrid, which I think is kind of what you're talking to, Tony, of like, mostly we'll know who's coming and when, but we might have 1 or 2 chargers that are just open to anyone who rolls up. I would call that a hybrid, but we can get into that more in a second. Paul, I see your hand up. We're not hearing you, or at least I'm not. Can others hear Paul?
No, Paul, I think you're
No,
muted.
he's muted.
It's like on your computer and on the Zoom. No, still.
Hey, Watson, this is Alex. I just had a kind of emergency situation come up that I'm gonna have to pull off in 20 minutes. We talk all the time, but I wanted to be, here for the end. But if there's anything that we need to get, together, me, you, and Ken after,
Okay.
I'm totally happy to do it. And I apologize for this.
Perfect. It's okay.
Thanks, Alex.
Paul, did you get your audio? Thanks, Alex. Did you get your? Not yet.
Paul's still figuring out the audio,
Okay.
so maybe we'll come
So-
back to him in a moment. Or
Yeah.
Paul, feel free to put it in chat.
Yeah, can I ask a question on dimensions? It's just a follow-up on that. Height, I'm assuming height, width, and length of the stall is part of the dimension.
Yeah.
Is turning radius also
Turning-
part of?
Yeah, turning radius, and then you'll also want to have traffic flow direction, really getting into that part of it, as we've talked before. I mean, depending on the right or left side, most of the trucks have passenger or driver side charging. So you just want to look at flow direction. You don't want trucks coming in from all different angles, going backward, opposing directions if you can. We're talking on the Class 8, the heavy, especially if they're pulling a load. So you want to have a nice flow that gets them in and out of the way. So turning radius and overall direction of traffic.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
That was exactly the good cue timing. So there is a lively discussion going on in one of the Charin working groups about CCS plus MCS and best practices for layouts. Unfortunately, in Europe, an OEM has put the port for CCS on the opposing side. And so it's, again, a lively discussion, but will this group be helping affirm or firm up the conclusions that having the port on the same side of the vehicle, MCS and or CCS, is a good idea?
I don't believe this group is planning to engage in that in a formal way. Certainly members of this group maybe, but Watson, Yazda, correct me if I'm wrong.
So
there's a white paper in formulation status right now, and the next call will be next week. I just kind of wanted to make sure, if anyone's not aware of that these best practices for turning and truck directions and so forth are, kind of being discussed in that other forum as well.
Sorry, guys, I can't figure out how to raise my hand on Zoom. I know where it is on Teams.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, a lot of really from a design standpoint, they should be focused on either both, left and right sides, or on center. Given different traffic flow directions, on the Class 8s in and through facilities, that actually was a big deal. And having on center actually optimizes how your flow through stations can be with the length of the charging cables.
On center, front to back of the vehicle, you mean?
Yeah,
Or-
on center line of the vehicle, neither passenger side or driver side, but you can access it centered. So your distance for your charging cable, you're not locked into having to drive in and have your charging port closest to the charger from a cord length. If you pull in and a charger is, let's just say on the driver's side, you have no problem reaching that port. You pull in a direction and for whatever reason, the charging cable is on the passenger side away from your port to lug that cable around. In many cases, it won't even reach. So that is of all things that turned to one of the big issues and concessions that we had to look at when designing our bays and our flow through on that. I think Tesla is the only truck that has it on center, which is the most logical position. That's on center bumper. You could also put it probably on center back of cab, but what you don't want to do is have drivers climbing up the back and having to lug a cable behind there. So center on bumper actually makes the most sense. Or talking to some of the OEMs, either both a Y, so you have a left and right port. Either way, you can access with the cable easily from the ground and not having to climb over anything.
So maybe folks that aren't aware, and I see Tom and Diego and others, we spent the better part of 5 years in the MCS working groups agreeing globally that the port would be driver's side behind the door, and even the UK and right-hand drive OEMs were okay with it. What I'm mentioning is a bit of a kerfluffle about CCS plus MCS design sites and the direction about having them be on the same side so that you have an orderly number of sites pull through, most likely, on islands that are servicing the truck from the left-hand side of it.
Thanks,
Maybe
Paul.
this
Yeah,
hasn't
I will
Yeah.
say for this map, another one of the attributes that will be included for each site is the charging standard available there, or standards for those that have multiple. So it will certainly show CCS, MCS. So you know that whatever your truck has, whether you can use it or not. I think we'll leave the full site design best practices discussion to the Charin group that's already taken that up. But for other feedback on the map or how we might define medium and heavy duty, particularly in this interim until those site best practices are finalized. Any other feedback? I see Diego, and then Tom, I see your feedback. But Diego, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so the I guess the minimum stall size that we use is 13 by 25 feet, and that's for like, a truck backing in or pulling forward into a stall. So that's sort of like the minimum requirement. And then you can layer on top of that whether it's a pull through lane, and then layer on top of that turning radius, right? Things like that. On the charge port location discussion, it'd be great if it was all in one spot. But inevitably customers ask for ports at different locations because they want it customized to match their operations, right? So if they have a depot where they have all their trucks backing in, then they'll probably ask for a charging port at the back of the vehicle, which, like today, you've got your gas fills on a variety of locations of light duty vehicles. I don't know if it's a hard ask that it all is at the same location. It'd be great, but I don't know how you really control for that.
Yeah, it feels like the manufacturers, whether they agreed to where they're putting it 5 years ago, already doubled down on a location without really thinking through the actual mechanics of how you charge this and what a Class A driver has to do that and how it flows through facilities work. So it's
We're
hard to
definitely learning as we go. I
yeah,
know
hard to
there's a
put
lot
the
of
toothpaste back in the tube on that one. So I guess
yeah.
moving forward.
Yeah. Tom, you've been patiently waiting. Please.
Yeah, thanks. I like this conversation. I think getting into a fair amount of detail here is necessary, even if it's maybe not preferable. And just want to acknowledge, thus far, the way that Volterra is designing sites is that they're not open to the public. We are starting to design sites that may be multi-fleet. I will say that, we may design sites that are at least partially publicly available as we go forward. So just a flag on that. But what I did want to just acknowledge is that, we're really at present designing sites to fleet specifications. And so that's where they know what trucks they're using. They know if they need to accommodate trailers on site or not. And so thinking about this from a public context, just recognizing that there are differences between different types of trucks. And while I anticipate, some deployments will accommodate pass-through trailers, I'm also cognizant that other publicly available charging sites may require, trailer drop off and pick up, prior to and then post charging. So I think just, thinking about this from a driver perspective, need to be pretty clear with, what type of truck or vehicle and kind of with or without trailer can be accommodated at a charging facility.
Thanks, Tom. Totally agree. And that's actually a great segue into the next question, I think, about how we're defining the kind of ownership or usage agreement types of these sites. To your point, we wouldn't want someone to see a terawatt station, even though it's open on a map, and think, oh, I can just show up and charge there, if that's not the business model. So, right now we're kind of using these terms shared versus public to mean shared. It's for multiple fleets. It's not just a behind the fence at one fleet's depot, but you do need an agreement to charge there. Whereas public is more the truck stop model. Anyone could just show up and charge. I think there are some assumptions about, maybe charging times or power levels in some of these. Like public, I think would be more the e-truck megawatt charging model eventually, so that you could quickly charge and get back on the road. Shared could be overnight charging, or it could also be high power. And then, as we discussed, there are certainly hybrid sites we're aware of where most of the business model is shared, but there's maybe a couple open public sites. I'm curious, do these terms resonate with folks on this call? Are there other terms that you're hearing the industry align around that we should be aware of? Any feedback on these?
No. Not that I could think of.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
Well, glad we're on the right
Sorry.
track. Oh yeah, please.
Jesse, sorry. Which terms are you referring to on here, on this page?
Yeah, on that second bullet, the shared, public, and then hybrid being the kind of both term.
No. I mean, I'm not hearing any definitions, but clearly there's a good need for one.
Okay, then I'm going to assume that if we can clearly define these, say on the map what we mean by these, as well as for intake when we're adding new sites, maybe we'll continue using these unless we see some alignment around others. All right, I think yeah, please.
It occurs to me that a driver looking, for where to charge would be less interested in, something on a map called hybrid. For us like planners and looking at it, it kind of makes sense, but they're just looking, is it publicly accessible? Yes or no?
Yeah, and
that's a great point.
I think we've heard the term semi-public on occasion too, because potentially during a given time window, it might be allocated for private, but other times are available to public.
Yeah.
I've seen some operations like that too, right?
Yeah, so that could be, I mean, if you're imagining a driver looking at an app, that might be all confusing. They need to know, is it accessible, yes or no, and or if limited, what time, or I don't know.
Right.
Right, but that
What do you
almost
think,
aligns
Alice?
with.
Yeah, I was going to say at the MHX side is probably, we've been using the term hybrid, but it's more that model of you need to be a known entity with the ability to come in, so it's semi-public behind the fence, But if you're one of the contract fleets that we deal with, not our fleet, or kind of doubling down on that, if it's another company that says, hey, can we come in and use this? Then at least they're registered, they know our safety protocols, they're expected, and they can come in versus just to your point, a semi-public I can drive in at some time. There has to be a protocol for them to come in, and once set up, then they can use it. So probably some.
Yeah, but and then so that almost kind of sounds like us, right?
Yeah.
But
And-
we would be more accessible, right? I mean,
Right, so-
you may have to get behind the fence, but that's as simple as, you
Right.
know, here's
So then
my card.
So then it might be, is on these semi-public or hybrid sites, either there's a fourth category where there's just some definition behind those and which of those sites apply. So, if we're being asked, hey, how do we define these? Well, we can go through and define what our locations are like, and then a definition come in place. I just, what's the action that you need us to take on this? It's kind of my question, if we needed to.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. No, this is all super helpful. So I'm hearing maybe don't use hybrid because it might be confused with a hybrid vehicle. And perhaps semi-public would be a better term to describe those types of sites that offer both.
Yeah, or maybe public, with an asterisk, public with restrictions, and then somebody can look up like, well, what is it? Is it a time restriction? Is it a
agreement restriction?
Yeah.
Something.
Right. Yeah, I know. I've been trying to track all your various business models, and it's very complicated. I know there's some where like it's public, so you'll get a better rate if we have an agreement. So we'll spend some
and our business models are
that.
developing, so it's not easy.
And outside of the EV industry, right? On demand is a key term in a lot of spaces.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, that's a great point. I think we've got about 2 minutes left for discussion, so I'm just going to move to the next one. Are there any features that you would be interested in seeing in a map like this that we didn't talk about yet? Or that you think fleet users would be really interested in?
We already talked about just the basic like rate of charge, all the spec part of it.
Yeah, actually, I guess I didn't really share exactly what we're planning, but for this first iteration, some of the basic attributes will be, obviously address, power level, if you need an agreement or not, versus if you can just show up, it's publicly available, the charge port standard, that it can work there. If folks want to share any info on pricing, we may be able to include that. Though my sense is that will be more the conversation that happens once they get connected with that specific site developer.
I have to jump off. I really apologize. Again, we can connect later if there's any specifics. So Watson can. Sorry about this, and I'll talk to you guys later.
You gave us good input, Alex. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
See you guys.
Jesse, Tom here. Just a quick note. I think it's probably too early for what I'm about to say, but at some point in time, probably relevant to identify sites that, may have charging ability in grid down or grid disruption scenarios. So we're pretty early days with, this ZEV transition in the truck space, but at greater scale, I think even thinking about sort of evacuation route type treatment, may be appropriate.
Yeah, I love that. The resilience aspect. And I should mention, relatedly, another attribute we're thinking of including is whether that site is powered by renewable energy. I know a lot of fleets or their customers are interested in tracking some of that. So for those sites that are either purchasing RECs or have on-site electricity generation. I like this idea, Tom. Thanks. All right, I think we're. Oh yeah,
and Jesse, I was just gonna ask a question. I think I know the answer, but I know in the light duty world, sometimes using a lot of terminology that sounds engineering-ish is not desirable. It sounds like in this world, the drivers know the height of their truck, they know the width of their truck. I'm assuming that we can use a lot of numerical values and I don't say technical jargon, but the use of jargon's okay in this segment. Is that correct? Assumption?
I think we'll try to keep it as layman friendly as possible. I don't envision that this will be used by like drivers on an app out on the road looking for charging in the near term, just because we're not really seeing long haul deployments
Okay.
yet. I know that's the goal, but I think more fleet managers, when they're looking at, can I electrify my vehicles? Is there charging near me? So, you know, if I'm not interested or unable to install my own charging, what's around. So more like that high level thing, they would know where they're going or like know who to reach out to set up an agreement for usage. And then the driver would just go to that site each day. I think over time this may change, but that's kind of where I'm envisioning us heading in the near term. Thank you. This has been amazingly helpful feedback. So really appreciate that. We are going to need to move on to the next section for the sake of time. But again, my email's in the chat. I'll throw it in again here. Please send me any additional feedback that you have that we didn't have time for. Happy to meet, talk through things. Otherwise, of course, you will hear from us once we have a first version available.
Great, thanks, Jesse. And so I'll transition over to more discussion over connectors and the North American charging system connector, and we can jump to the next slide there, please. We conducted a number of interviews with early on. Jesse conducted led the interview process with the truck OEMs, and then we also had interviews with the tier one suppliers. And then we've also had a series of interviews with the equipment manufacturers. And since we've done those interviews, this NACS standard has become more of a thing. And so this wasn't included in our interviews. And so the big question that we're going to have is you know, what we're trying to understand is how do we integrate this discussion into the work we've done already and the advice that we give to the CEC. So the question starting out is the NACS. This is you know maybe informally more called the Tesla connector. Just it's being adopted by a large number of light duty vehicle manufacturers. You know, you could say a majority of them even. But if you notice on this list, there's a couple manufacturers that are making some of the medium duty vehicles also, like Mercedes-Benz with the Sprinter van, and Rivian, who's making the Amazon vans and things like that. And so you're starting to see some manufacturers moving towards that. And so the question, you know, we're starting to ask ourselves, and what the CEC's asked us is, you know, what's the implication is on the medium heavy duty market? If you mind going to the next slide there, please, that'd be great. So you know, the MCS standard kind of really opened the, you know, the pathway to higher power charging. So we had an AC standard, you know, some people call it the 1772 connector, and we had the CCS pathway for fast charging, and that's also now you know, the power levels of that are increasing with active cooling. And then to get over into the megawatt, multi-megawatt zone, the MCS connector is that pathway to do that. So on the next slide, thank you, Andrew Mines, for these slides here. So as Andrew described here, the NACS connector, NACS connector, actually fits into an interesting place because because there's a couple things that it does that's really unique. And I won't get too much in the weeds here, but one of the things it can do with AC charging is it can use one leg of a 480 volt power feed. So if you had a site that wanted to use level 2 charging, in today's environment with the CCS, you had to have a step down transformer to 12208 volts to utilize AC charging. This NACS connector can connect on that single leg of a 40 volt. So that's kind of cool in AC. It also can do, theoretically up to about 900 kW. So which is about the power level of some of these early MCS chargers. And so it's kind of hitting an interesting spot where there may be fleets that have that have a number of medium duty vehicles. Maybe they're going to have NACS connectors on those vehicles. The question is going to be if they have other trucks on those sites, are they going to want to utilize that same connector, or are they going to have multiple connectors on the vehicle? So that's kind of the setup for the discussion that we have on the next slide of just like, so the question for folks here on the call is this NACS disrupt or impact the development of the charging connectors for medium heavy duty trucks? Are we seeing any signs of that, or is again, is this something that we're just trying to understand? Anybody seen anything? I'm
Watson,
gonna call on somebody if no one jumps in.
I'm happy to talk a little bit about
Okay,
this.
perfect. Great, thanks, Diego.
We are, like I said, we're developing MCS. Everything revolves around that port design
Okay.
for our vehicles, long term, and that is both for like a true MCS charging cycle that you need over a megawatt of power for that over the road, long haul application, but also utilize the same form factor, that MCS plug, for overnight charging. Now, how the transition from CCS to NACS happens and which vehicle class really is the trigger to then step up to that MCS form factor is, that's like trying to predict the future, knowing exactly when it happens. I can't really say. We will support whatever customers in the market require during that transition. But it's probably going to be a lot of adapters in the meantime, right? CCS to NACS adapters, NACS to CCS adapters is probably what's gonna be in the mix. And I think you've seen some of the light duty OEMs saying that they will only support certain adapters sold by certain parties. So I don't know if that helps clarify, but at least the way we see long term is MCS is that standard form factor, whether it's low level, high power for medium heavy duty vehicles. There is that cutoff that you said between, I don't know, class 3, 4, 5 vehicles where you'll see a blend. But yeah, that's our thinking and our strategy.
Great. No, thank you, Diego. I heard somebody was going to ask a question or add a comment.
I think it was Daniel who spoke up, but I can talk about adapters if Daniel doesn't want to speak.
The only thing I was going to say about adapters and this is Daniel Black from Volvo Energy, is that for passenger cars, they're using adapters in this interim space between CCS and NACS. From a heavy duty perspective, with how large the battery packs are and how fast the vehicles can charge, adapters become kind of a big hindrance for a customer because you don't have the same liquid cooled or extended charge times. I mean, you could see a commercial vehicle charging at 350 kilowatts for 2 hours. Well, an adapter that's not liquid cooled, which is a very difficult thing to do, really puts a cap on that, right? You get maybe 100 kilowatts, maybe 150 kilowatts before you have to start really doing some either high tolerance temperature monitoring or some kind of cooling on that adapter itself. So I think it's going to be a much trickier space when it comes to commercial vehicles, just because of the nature of battery sizes and charge speeds that we're looking for.
And again, I'll speak up if nobody wants, just because actually, somebody's got their hand up first, but I can just kind of talk about what's going on with adapters and reliability and testing. But Watson, you decide who should go next.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Ted. Yeah.
So anyway, so again, Ted Bone, Argonne National Lab. I'm the sponsor for the J3400/1 adapter safety and OEM qualification. Adapters are going to be a bridge, and so for the medium duty segment, you don't want to have to, or put it this way, the use of the legacy J3400 Tesla chargers is not really an issue because you can't get to them. It's got a 2-meter cord. So that's the first part. There are non-flexible, there are rigid and non-rigid adapters. So the ones that look like a coffee can or a brick, those are, again, with Magic Dock, they're retained on the end of the connector, but the cord is still short. So another thing to remember is that some of these might need an extension cord just to reach the inlet if you plan to use legacy stuff. For new stuff, as Paul's comment in the chat box earlier, it's really important just to size the right tool for the right job. If you need a 4-meter cable to have safe access to your truck inlet, then that's what you're going to use. And the same thing goes with NACS, MCS, dual output chargers. I think I showed slides last year of the ones that the thing that I'm taking around to trade show saying this thing exists, and we're going to be testing them at full power. And that's the way it should be, is that you have an outlet, you have a cable for each type of inlet on the vehicle, and you don't need an adapter. Again, you don't use a bridge when there's a road, right? When there's a path there. So that's just, it's important for people to know that there's the right way to do things, and then there's the thing you have to do because you don't have another plan. And on the inlets, as Daniel was just saying, if you have an adapter in there, you're going to derate on temperature. So if you're pushing for and again, 500 or 600 amps on NACS is pretty reasonable. 900 amps is just, it's gonna compromise life, and there's just a whole bunch of reasons why you can't really run that hard for a big battery pack, and that's why MCS seems to be the more prudent way when people get there. So we using the analogy of the aircraft associations, they basically say we're going to keep using CCS and keep ratcheting up the current up to 800 amps on CCS. Then they'll transition to MCS when the products are reliable and are available, which again, they're available, but only in prototypes now. But that's important. It's just to kind of look at a plan for 2025 and 27, right? And, start where we are. And that's what, Daniel and Diego and others were saying, like, we can plan for today, or we can build on what we have today, but we have to plan for tomorrow. So I just thought I'd put that in there, and a whole bunch of stuff is happening each week on that. So I'll pass the talking stick to the hands. People have hands up.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, each week is right. I love your comment
every
there.
day.
Yeah.
Well, again, some days like yesterday, we had 4 J3400 meetings. Like, it's just, it never stops.
Right.
So Mr. Ross, I think you were next with your hand up there.
Thank you. I'm from a container terminal operator, ITS, and I just wanted to ask you all, why are you discussing inductive charging, wireless? You get around the whole clock. I know that there are a couple of manufacturers who have very high power capabilities on wireless charging, and there's also standards being developed. So in principle, we should also very soon, regardless of what manufacturer you have installed on your vehicle, you can drive over a charging pad from a different manufacturer, and then it will be working. That seems like the real smart solution. Also, you don't need to worry about whether the charging cable is long enough and so on, and drivers don't even need to get out of their truck, and you can that way also have the charging possibilities at places where they're just temporarily stopped.
Yeah, I'm not, good, thanks for the comment there. So, you know, when we did these interviews, we asked just generally what the pathway was for going forward. Now, that was from the interviews with the OEMs and the equipment suppliers. Maybe it was our selection criteria, but we got pointed towards MCS, but maybe that's because we were asking that. Is any reactions to that question about why not wireless, and isn't that the way forward for high power? Any other reactions?
Again, unless somebody else speaks up, I'll just say firsthand, tested it, you know, the great pumping ain't coming. After 14 years, a decade and a half, right? There's still not a qualified J2954 at any level in the OEM market, right? There's lots of demos. The Electron demo is $2 million a mile for the dynamic wireless, plus they want to get it down to just $1,000 per receiver. And again, it's not a lot of power. It's like 100 kilowatt. So compared to CCS, compared to J3400, it really can't compete, even with maintenance. So there's just a whole bunch of reasons why these things that were coming 10, 15 years ago are still not here. And it's just three reasons: cost.
I wasn't referring to dynamic charging.
Yeah, I'm just saying both, right? The point is that they said, oh, if it's not static, it's dynamic. It's just, you know, the $2 million per mile just shuts that right down. And then for the static charging of Ideanomics and Wave and all these companies who have just folded, right? Momentum Dynamics, there's just a what do you call, path of destruction of all the companies who have never been able to make an affordable product that goes on a truck, only demos. So when you're just saying plan for that, it's like, that's a bad bet. So I tested a whole bunch of them. And again, it's just all the things that have to happen either aren't going to happen or aren't going to happen. Just to be really clear on why we don't see this, even on locomotives, right? Like locomotives have plenty of area, but it's not the right technology.
I think that we have 1,500 city commuter buses driving around various places in the United States with inductive chargers. I think most of those will qualify as medium or heavy duty vehicles. So it's working. But if you want to talk about dynamic charging, there are quite some developments in contact dynamic charging. Actually, we are set out to test something here in the next 2 years on a private site, but that's something else. Just seems a lot smarter in the long run.
And I think that is what's going to overtake it. But again, each of these demos are just, you know, millions of dollars, and it takes a lot of momentum to get anything launched.
And we are not, just from the e-truck perspective, we are not against it, but we're not developing the market. We're kind of trying to get the market to advance faster. But there have been some specific market reasons, as Ted is pointing out, that just inductive hasn't taken up. But we're happy to hear input and commentary on that regard.
And same with the three-phase, all these different geometries, prove me wrong, right? Come up with a system that doesn't have these pitfalls. But there are so many bankrupt companies that have shown why you can't do this.
Yeah, and we do have in one of our reports that we're in the middle of getting published, we do a technology survey of what are some of the technology pathways forward, and we do talk about wireless and that. Hey Tony, I see your hand up. You've been patient too, so.
Yeah, no, this is great discussion. So back on the NACS thing, you know, so again, I'm with BP. We're just here to provide whatever power, you know, the customer needs in whatever format, right? So I want to kind of quickly kind of replay what I heard from Diego and from and from Daniel. And that is, because we can picture, I mean, right now we're planning a couple of 400 kilowatts and an MCS unit. We may also put a big Tesla, what are they, mega charger unit, whatever, 750 kilowatts. Is that what they are? If that's what our customers, are wanting. So at our public sites, right? So I think what I heard from you, first of all, Diego, is that for Daimler, you guys are designing for MCS. That's what the design, that's what the future you see. And then from Daniel, I guess what I'm hearing you talk about the possibility of an adapter, but that's limited about up to the capacity that an adapter is even useful. And of course, what I'm talking about is Class 8 trucks, right? So for Class 8 trucks, I guess I'm not replaying. I'm just asking: is Daimler or Volvo? Is there a world in which a Class 8 truck can charge at a, Tesla 750 kilowatt charger?
I believe this is, Tesla has said already that they would. I mean, Tesla was part of the Charin task force for the MCS design. So what they're using now for their mega chargers is just an old MCS design, right? It was designed 2.4, if I remember correctly.
Oh, okay.
And the one that's official and proposed by the task force is 3.2, right? We're getting into the details, and they've said that they would change the form factor once it's adopted by the market.
Okay. All right. So I mean, as you said before, Diego, it's hard to predict, the timing of all this, but I guess we can conceive of, it's possible that they kind of catch up, and then we're all in the MCS world.
Correct. At least, that's what they've shared. And on just to circle back on the adapter topic, for true MCS charging, like Dan said, adapters are a no-go. Adapters are only for lower power sessions, maybe temporary, right? D-rated sessions, as we transition between the CCS form factor to NACS, right? I can see customers in the future that order like a Class 6 vehicle, which is sort of the cutoff in terms of power requirements, where MCS is a standard plug, and they choose to add a optional CCS or NACS plug to that vehicle.
Good, thanks.
I want to do a time check with the rest of the team here. Liz or Yasna, this is a great discussion. I appreciate that. Should we move on here?
We've got a few more minutes, maybe up to 5 max.
Okay, because we had a good discussion here, so I didn't want to stop it. So, but I know we were trying to do a survey here, though, right?
Yeah, I had my hand up just to do the yes and part on Tony's question about can you or should you, and so and Diego is very clear to say the V2.4 design for communication and interlocks is basically using the 3400 architecture. So basically, it's just a turbocharged 3400 connector. It won't be compatible with the J3271. So MCS and V2.4 not compatible at all on communication or interlocks. So you can't use an adapter kind of at all, if there even was such a thing. So the whole idea of Mark Westphal and Tesla saying that they have low production, they don't need to invest a whole bunch into 3271, but they've indicated that if that's the way the infrastructure is going, that's what they'll also provide.
So will those vehicles have to be retrofit then, Ted?
I think so. I think but it's a swap out and a comms control. So, just the two things. Connector inlet is going to change, and then the comms controller is going to need a swap out. But again, it's a very low fleet, less than 100 vehicles. So it's not like, you know, they've gone down the road and have to back up a mile.
Good. Any other last questions, comments, thoughts, reactions?
I'll just
around
add
this?
in on a thought starter. A lot of questions are coming to me about medium voltage connections, and so you know, Paul Stith, I think, stepped away, but you know, Danny and others should say, hey, I'm working on projects that are above 5 megawatt. What kind of new world of paperwork do I have to work on to get utility interconnection for medium voltage, right? So the thing that feeds those, you know, multiple 700 kilowatt stations, whenever your aggregate is above 5 megawatt, and that's what, you know, Ken was showing later, that they'll be ready to test. And he's on the discussion with the people I'm talking to and talking about. But they're asking, how do I get ready? So from, you know, the bigger industry, what do you call it, steering committee, right? Something to be aware of. People are asking the question directly, how do I get my stuff approved by utilities to be installed?
Yeah. Yeah, and so as we move into these power levels, this is a much bigger discussion. But as we move into these power levels, you're right. You know,
but it's literally a go
over
no go question. Like, will you accept my equipment to be installed? And they say, what marks do I need to be on it, or what kind of drawings do you need to accept? You know, this. That's a biggie. It really is a big hurdle to clear.
Yeah, and over 2.5 megawatts, everything kind of changes.
Yes.
Just to leave it at that for now. So, all right, Christopher, any? Oops, maybe did we lose Christopher? Hey, Paul. Any
So
closing
I'd love
thoughts
to,
on this topic here?
Yeah, I think that, you know, it's in chat, and I heard from Diego as well, and the trend line. What I think the market will benefit from is also discussing cord length in you know, honest cord length for these types of applications, and particularly I'm going to say the public charging of that. Just like what Ted described about a utility, it kind of needs to be on the approved list for a variety of reasons. I have an opinion that cord length needs to be one of those sorts of things that falls into this layout puzzle, and it ends up being part of the public funding streams, so that we don't, if it's public charging, if it's public dollars, CFI or otherwise, that we have some agreement about the direction where this is going, so we don't get some haywire configurations with cords being drug all over, around, under axles, whatever craziness. Seems like we need to help the industry see that logic. Higher power trend line means we really need to be careful about layouts and cord length.
Seems like we could draw a lesson from fuel pumps, right? Where they can accommodate fuel inlets and vehicles at various locations, and they've got smart, you know, fairly decent hose management systems. Seems like cable management is an opportunity here to accommodate. You know, it'd be great to have the ports on the standard location on the vehicles, but for those that may veer off the standard location, you know, the worst thing you want to happen is dragging the cord, for sure, like you said,
Yeah.
Paul. And it
Yeah,
could.
but if everybody agreed that MCS has a kind of like the strike zone of a pitch, right?
Mhm.
It'll be at hip height behind the driver's side door in North America. If we've actually already agreed on that, then we need to hold fast to that with regard to CCS and NACS and all the other possible ways to get the fuel in there. And you know, cord management's out there. Cooling of those cables becomes an issue. By the way, we're looking at aircraft and they want 50 feet cables minimum, right? I mean, but if this market could do one thing to benefit itself from service and support, is to try to hone in on what is the most serviceable cable lengths.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Totally on board.
Okay, we see one more hand up. Great discussion. And if you guys can go 5 minutes over or so, please do stay. But Christopher, you have your hand up from San
Yes,
Diego.
can you hear me all right now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I just wanted to build a little bit upon the comment relating to the utilities. It's very important, even if things aren't completely set in stone, for entities to reach out to their utility and let them know what the end size of their system is going to be. A great example of this is down in Otay Mesa. You have this scramble of fleets that are trying to meet the requirements for the ACF rule, and they have moderate sized systems with chargers ranging from 250 to 350 kilowatts. And even though we are required to provide service to these fleets, that area in particular doesn't have the most sophisticated infrastructure built out. So it puts us in a position where we're rushing to get this capacity to these fleets, or as if these fleets had reached out to us sooner and maybe been in the pipeline a little bit earlier, it wouldn't have been such a difficult position as it is now. So just wanted to throw that out there. It's really important to reach out to your utility and let them know what amount of capacity you're going to be requiring.
Thanks, Christopher. I think Liz, we'll pass it over to you and Gia to conduct a quick survey before we close things out.
Thanks, Nate. Yes, we have a quick survey of 4 questions, which will help us inform the next ITACs. We just want to see what are the priorities for our ITAC members, and then maybe some specific discussion topics that we can focus on at the next ITAC and kind of have a panel discussion on. So it's just 4 quick questions that are multiple choice. Just checking that everyone can see the questions up on their screen.
I see them.
Thanks, Nate.
So give us some input so we know what your priority topics are, and we can engage better. So we're trying this new tool a little bit here.
Yeah, and your time's super valuable. We want to make sure that that we're creating value for you too, because you're providing tremendous value to us, actually. So this discussion was super helpful today.
And this is anonymous when it comes in, so we won't see who answered what. If you if you care to know that.
Within the 10 of us here.
Yeah, this is true. It's more than 10.
Oh, sure. A really good discussion. And while you're waiting on results, let me just all of this is so relevant to our internal meetings right now. So I encourage love to see the slides and the recording just as soon as you can.
Absolutely. Yeah. We do have the slides and recording posted within, I'll have to check with the team, but within, a week or 2, I think something on that.
Today would be good.
They'll be up on our website hopefully by tomorrow.
Oh, okay. By tomorrow.
That'd be great. That would be great. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Gia. You know what? I could run over our closing items too, while if there's still people working on the poll. Thanks. So, yeah, any ITAC feedback?
I put some email feedback, not into the actual document. I don't know who actually read that. It was a really quiet crickets after I sent that, about using the truck capacities of today and averaging them and trending towards the higher side. Maybe putting some more weight on the market readiness to lean forward, right? And this has to do with the MCS adoption timelines and battery capacity, charging rates, things like that. It just felt like picking more conservative might not suit the purposes of the group of leaning forward into what's coming, in the next 10 years.
Yeah, thanks for that,
So
Paul.
I don't know if anybody else read what I wrote, but I chose my words pretty carefully to basically say, look, let's not use averages. Let's use the trend line of where the puck is going.
Yeah, we read it.
If
We
you're
discussed.
planning power at transmission and substation level planning, those are 5 to 10 and more year exercises. So we've got to be purposeful about saying that's where we're going, not iffy about it.
Exactly. We're incorporating that into our big report, Paul. So appreciate your feedback.
Cool. Okay. I saw another reminder to put it in the report and I didn't. So I want to make sure it was in there. Thanks.
Yeah. So any feedback on the interactive map or heat map that Liz went over today, you can send it to her email. It's bolded on the bottom here. Anything on the Advanced Transportation Research Center, you could send over to Ken Lim. His email's here. If you're interested in joining a subcommittee to discuss specific research topic areas for high power EVSE systems, you can email me. And any additional feedback, feel free to email to me. And keep an eye out for our meeting summary notes in a follow-up email. I'll link to the slides and the recording, but as Gia said, we'll have the slides available on our website tomorrow. I think that wraps it up. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for the great discussion today. I don't know if Yasmin or Watson, you want to mention anything else, but thanks again.
No, I just wanted to say that here we have the results of the 4 questions, what people are seeing, sort of grid capacity, mapping charging needs seem to be popping up. The voice, the needs of my industry fleets, OEMs, number 3 and number 4, ITAC member discussions and feedback on ITAC deliverables. So we'll save this and thank you for responding. Hope today was good. We got definitely value out of it. And thank you for your participation. This is important.
Yeah, no, really good discussion. Thanks, everybody.
Great, thanks.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.